It all began with a question, a quiet thing, a quest for knowledge, inspiring me. Too many helplessly idly wait for the heavenly, but I'll accept no suppression of my empathy. I'm here to change the world.
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and today I guess I'm a guest on his channel. Hi there, God Works Out. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Haven't really done a collaboration with you in a while, so it's really nice to get back into the swing of things with some dumbass comments, right?
Oh, this is one of my favorite things to do. I've been looking forward to this for so long. So, like he said, I'm God Works Out, but I go by Aeolus, aka your favorite atheist, and these are the most stupid religious comments that we could find this week. Woo! I've been waiting to do that for a very long time.
Years. I'm pumped. I'm pumped for all of these dumb comments, these stupid religious comments that we got going on today. You ready for them?
But whoa. We gotta maintain the tradition. So before we even do that, what you drinking on?
Well, I've got some lemonade and tea, commonly called an Arnold Palmer, because we're recording this at like 2 p.m. So it's not drinking time yet for me.
Well, I got an original sin here that I might drink.
Yeah.
Pineapple version. But with stupid religious comments, sometimes you gotta go a little hard. So I got some Milagro tequila here. I'm gonna be finishing up. So let me go ahead and take a shot of this while you get that up there.
All right. So the first comment that we have today is from George Cherry. George says, "Wouldn't waste my time replying without sound proof of God's non-existence, so you can keep the bowl to yourself. Love exists and it came from Him. If it's simply a chemical reaction, then the chemicals that cause it came from Him also. Prove it didn't. Until then."
Oh.
Honestly, I don't really think that I want God's chemicals in my brain. Like, it sounds nasty personally.
It sounds like it would give you like an unbelievable high. Like when you do drugs.
Yeah.
Like inserting God's chemicals into your brain. You're just like thinking in big bangs every time one of your synaptic nerves fires. Big bangs everywhere.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think about the whole idea of the chemical reactions being because of God? I don't know. That kind of seems like it's an ad hoc type of excuse for why love and all the different emotions that we feel, they just seem to be chemical reactions.
Well, I mean, as far as we know, they are just chemical reactions. But if you look at this comment on the face value, it appears to be just another burden of proof argument, which is always good to address because despite the fact that they've never met their burden of proof for millennium, they still present these arguments. As far as it being just a chemical reaction, you can look here, right? And he says that if it's simply a chemical reaction, then the chemicals that cause it are from Him also. So if it's not a chemical reaction, whatever it is, he's just going to say that thing came from God.
Yeah. I feel like this comment is literally God fucking your brain.
Well, so he's saying that we shouldn't even waste our time replying without sound proof of God's non-existence. But for those people that don't know what the burden of proof is, the burden of proof is you're the one making a claim, which is that a God exists. So you have to be the one to provide proof of that claim. We do not have to accept your claim without evidence. That's fact number one. Fact number two is you cannot prove a negative. in the same way that you cannot prove God exists or God doesn't exist, you cannot prove that leprechauns don't exist. You can't prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. Now we have, I'd say, good reason and some logical arguments that could tell us that those things do not exist, but no one can ever prove it beyond the shadow of a doubt. You know what I mean?
Oh yes, definitely. I understand. I understand. A lot of times whenever I'm asked this particular question, that you got to prove that God doesn't exist first. I try to point out to the person that, look, it's not on me to prove you wrong, because you haven't actually supported your claim first. Like, you just ad hoc or baselessly asserted that your God exists without any kind of evidence. So it's kind of hard to give you all of the evidence that proves that your God doesn't exist when, you literally don't have any evidence to suggest that he does. I mean, like, that would be the evidence if I could hand you evidence that he doesn't exist. But again, that's not how things work. You don't prove like a negative in that sense, in that particular context. You don't prove that God doesn't exist. Like, I can prove definitely that the Yahweh God doesn't exist. He's got his own rule book out there that we can measure him by and determine whether or not that description is accurate to what we experience in reality. And in that way, we can provide evidence that that particular definition of God doesn't exist. But God on the whole, like a deistic or just a general idea of God, it's just simply not how it works to prove he doesn't exist.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I've said this in a previous video. I think it was called something like Atheists Disprove God's Existence. And it basically made the argument that the more information that you provide about your God, such as like a Bible, which describes his nature and his behavior, the more information you provide, the more likely it actually is that we can disprove him based on logical inconsistencies within that narrative. So the more attributes that you give to your God, and the more details you provide us about him, if they happen to be, like I said, logically inconsistent, or parts of his nature are contradictory to other parts of his nature, then we can easily take that information and disprove it. I'd say with pretty good understanding that he does not exist. Now, if you just have like a deistic God who you think just set everything into motion, okay, yeah, we don't have enough information. We can't actually disprove it.
Yeah, I agree. You ready for the next comment?
Hell yeah. Sorry. Hold on. George Cherry. What was his name?
Hold on.
George Cherry. That cherry just got popped, son. Because you're a dumbass of the week.
Yes, we definitely popped George's cherry. All right, so next comment that we have is from Elkism. I don't know what kind of ism. Yeah, I don't know what kind of ism that is, but damn.
No, it looks like Elkism.
Elkism. Yeah.
So he doesn't believe in elk.
If the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt, then God exists. They are proof. How else do you walk away from slavery with wealth on a population-wide scale?
Whew. What do you think about this? People just taking information from a story in the Bible and then saying, "See, that place right there exists. That town exists. Therefore, the whole Bible is true."
Yeah, this is kind of, what is it, a part of a whole kind of fallacy. Like, you have a small portion of a story that's correct. That does not then mean that the entire thing is correct. Even if there were Hebrew slaves in Egypt, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Pentateuch or the first 5 books of the Bible are historical narratives. I mean, obviously, the first 5 books of the Bible are not historical narratives because there were no massive amounts of Hebrew slaves that built anything in Egypt or were kept as slaves.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because from what historical evidence we do have, it's pretty safe for us to say that most likely the Hebrews were never slaves in Egypt. Okay, so what a horrible foundation for proof of your God's existence. Okay, and then I don't even want to address the second part of the comment yet. I just want to stick to the first part of it because he jumps into a whole nother arena entirely. Okay, but let's just think about this from a logical standpoint. Okay, let's say there were 100,000, 200,000, maybe 300,000 Jews in a desert leaving Egypt, right? The distance that they covered, they should have been able to cover in 3 days, if maybe a week at the most. Okay, in fact, if all of those people were in a single file line, one end of the line would have started from the distance that they left to their actual destination, which according to the Bible took them, 40 years? They wandered around 40 years?
Well, yeah, that's because Moses fucked up big time, and he's the reason why they had to wander around for 40 years. I mean, he took his giant rod and he struck a rock with it to make water spew out when God just said he had to moan really loud or something. Well, not moan really loud. He just had to trust in God or have faith in God, and He would provide. And that would provide like the water and everything that they needed. But Moses wanted to take all of the not credit for himself, but like he wanted to be a big showman about it. So he took his staff and he struck a rock, and then water spewed out of the rock and everything like that. So that's why they had to wander around for 40 years, because Moses had his head up his ass, basically. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand why people think, like why Christians think that the Jews or Hebrews were slaves in the number of the millions in Egypt, when there's simply no evidence to suggest that they were ever slaves in Egypt, let alone numbering in the millions, because that's what they would have had to have numbered, according to the Bible, is on the scale of millions. And for this person to say they are proof that God exists, they're not actually proof, because they didn't actually exist. So I feel like this entire comment fails before that exclamation point.
And it gets even better. There's not one single shred of evidence across that desert that this group of people were inhabiting that area for 40 years. And just think about it. We also have no historical record. When they were fleeing, in the Bible, it tells the story about how Moses separated the waters and Pharaoh's army was just completely swallowed up. Like, you would think that we would have some type of evidence. Like, if there was just one, they would be pointing it out, but they have no evidence of this. Also, no historical writer ever mentions, like, one of the most significant events that occurred in this story, which was that the firstborn son of every native Egyptian was slaughtered by a god or a spirit of God in the middle of the night. We don't have one, and the Pharaoh's son was one of them. We have no historical mention of this at all.
Yeah, I know. A lot of times apologists will come back to you, though, and say that, well, it was a really embarrassing thing, so that's why they didn't record it. What do you think about that?
The whole Bible is full of embarrassing things. Do we really want to start talking about those stories?
Yeah, what was it? Noah, he got drunk and naked, and his sons found him, right? I mean, that kind of feels embarrassing.
Yeah, he got drunk off the wine.
Yeah.
That story is very ambiguous. We're not sure exactly what happened, but he did curse his son and all of his descendants. So I'm guessing, whatever happened in that naked tent, it wasn't too good.
Yeah, I don't.
Over here.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to. I don't want to know. But So for the second half of the comment, though, he says, "How else do you walk away from slavery with wealth on a population-wide scale?" Now, I'm betting a lot of people don't know what this is fucking talking about. But in the Bible, when you read about the Exodus, basically God had the Israelites all steal various things from the Egyptians as they were leaving. And it's not so much that they were stealing from them, but that God compelled the Egyptians to let them take it. And so basically they stole all of this precious metal stuff, all these precious things from the Egyptians as they were leaving out. And apparently that's just a historical fact to this person, which I don't know why they think that's historical fact. There's literally no evidence in history to support what the Bible claims about it. Not even mentioning the number of Hebrews or Israelites in the area, but also the idea that the Egyptians lost so much wealth because the Israelites took it from them. I mean, none of that exists in any kind of historical sense.
I think, I could be wrong, but I think they're trying to make a correlation to African American slavery and the fact that there seems to be some economic disparities between members that were, basically the whole population, when a few of those people came from slavery and other people from the country did not experience slavery. And so he's trying to make that correlation and say, see, obviously God had a hand in this, because these people were slaves, but now they're all rich.
Could be. I mean, the comment's very ambiguous, so I mean that could be an explanation for it. So, yeah,
it is. However, we should mention here that it is not impossible to be enslaved and then sometime in the future recover and have wealth on a population-wide scale. That's not impossible. It's also not proof of your God.
Right. I mean, these are very poor proofs of God if these are because if you think about it, you're going into the comment section to be like, oh, well, here's the best proof that I can think of right now for God. Fucking slaves.
Can you just see it don't worry, boys, I got this. I got the best argument on the internet. Just let me present this thing. It's honestly some trash. But I like this comment because I have heard many times when I was a Christian about the Exodus being one of the great proofs that that God had a chosen people and He led them out of slavery in Egypt on to found their own nation and be very successful. And people almost consider that as a prophecy that was fulfilled. So I'm glad this comment came up. However, Elkyism, the person that apparently doesn't believe in elk, stupid ass, dumb ass, most ridiculous ass religious comment of the week. Your proof could not be peer reviewed and therefore has been rejected by this committee. Have a nice day.
All right. So next one. Oh shit, hold on. I gotta reset this.
This one fact proves everything wrong. Proves evolution wrong.
Yeah, so this is from one of my videos. All right. So this is from one of my videos titled "This One Fact Proves Evolution Wrong," apparently. But this person says, ha 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 ha, understanding a process that does not exist? How stupid! Nowhere you see living, evolving cells appear from non-life. Abiogenesis does not exist. Not in lab and not in nature. Nowhere. Theology is not science. If you don't understand the basics and fundaments, you understand nothing at all. Toxic mind.
Oh, here we go. They love abiogenesis.
Yeah, they love mixing up abiogenesis and evolution too. Like that's a common thing. I don't know why they can't grasp the difference, but apparently that just escapes them. Is the whole fact that abiogenesis preceded evolution as far as on the in this particular context. And we actually don't have to see abiogenesis happening like right in front of us in order for us to recognize that it did happen at one time in the past, and that's what this person doesn't seem to understand.
Mm.
A lot of time. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it also stands to reason that we also would not see living, evolving cells appearing from non-life when we already have life. Maybe we could observe something like that somewhere where there is no life. And in a case like that, it would be highly confirmable. But even if we were to observe non-life producing life here, I'm sure that we would be extremely skeptical about it just because of the fact that we already know that life in its various forms exists here. And so how can we come to some conclusion or be able to verify that this life came from non-life rather than coming from the life that we already have here? So this is always held up as some sort of argument. Like, you remember the peanut butter guy? I opened up a jar of peanut butter this morning, and what do you know? It didn't have no life in it. And I thank God it didn't.
Yeah, I remember that guy. This guy though says that abiogenesis does not exist, not in the lab or not in nature. I would love for him to cite his source on being able to say that, because I really don't think that he would have a good source for that. But in any case, we do have a lot of good evidence that suggests that abiogenesis did happen at one point in the past, because we've got like the Miller-Urey experiment, which showed how amino acids can definitely be naturally created or come about naturally in the lab setting. And have these amino acids that are fundamental building blocks to life. That's one really good experiment that shows that. But we've also got other experiments showing how certain various chemicals out there that are needed for organic materials and organisms, they can actually self-order. We've been able to show that in the laboratory. So we have specific points like in our picture of abiogenesis that we've been able to actually prove in the laboratory. But just because we don't have the full picture doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And that seems to be the fundamental misunderstanding for a lot of these people.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Miller-Urey experiments, because that kind of cemented, at least for me, that cemented it that with these amino acids that are being able to be created out of like random fluctuations of what would be simulated electricity, as well as different heating, and I think it also went through like some water. Did it go through some water in the experiment? Water?
Yeah, it did have some liquid and basically like the what they suppose the primordial ooze or whatever the primordial mixture would have been made of.
Yeah, so that definitely cemented it for me that this obviously, while it's not such an in-depth experiment, we didn't actually produce life. Like, he did the experiment. A human didn't just hop out the test tube. Okay, I know that's what they wanted to see. That didn't happen. But what we did see is that the actual basics and fundamentals for life rose from non-life. And that's essentially what the Miller-Urey experiment showed us. Now, the next part of this, let's mention this real quick. He said abiogenesis does not exist. Okay, I hate when they word things like this. Abiogenesis is just actually an event. It's not a thing that can exist. It's more like a thing that happened. Okay? And theology is not science. What do you
Right.
think about that? We already know that. Is he arguing for us or for himself?
No. Well, okay. So I think what he's getting at here with the theology is not science is he's claiming that evolution is theological in nature, and abiogenesis included in evolution is theological in nature. So the common thing now is that the apologists, they try to put evolution on the same playing field as religion by calling it a religion.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a really
But
bad argument. It's a last ditch kind of argument.
It doesn't really help his case though, because the study of all religions is theology, which is also not a science.
Right.
He's not really helping himself here.
No, he's really not. Also, what are fundaments? Like, are those like
Listen,
new
they're fundaments. You don't understand them. They're fundaments. Okay.
I feel like they're kind of like an Altoid that's marketed towards like college people. What are these? Fundaments. They make you smarter. Oh, do they really? No, but you feel better about yourself because you got fundaments.
It could also be like some creationist created Altoids.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm copywriting that. Don't steal my idea, Kent Hovind. Okay.
I got these here fundaments. They are made from genuine crushed Tyrannosaurus Rex skulls. Because that's exactly what we find out there is the actual bone matter in the skulls.
and then they have a special flavor where the human was fossilized while riding a T-Rex. And the flavor is the human bones and T-Rex bones mixed together.
Yeah.
Very Kent Hovindish. But listen, if you don't understand the basics and them their fundaments, you understand nothing at all. Wow. and he does not understand the basics or the fundamentals, and he obviously understands nothing at all. So, crucium sanctum subit alleluia. Okay. Understanding a deity that does not exist, how stupid. Stamp him. Stupid ass religious comment of the week. Toxic mind, he says. I think he's talking about his own mind.
Oh yeah, I think so. All right, this next comment comes from Twitter, and I have to say that it's very very Christian. So this person says,
hold on before you read it. Who is this? Because that name sounds familiar. I feel like
Samantha D, Pro-Life Sam. I'm not really all that sure.
Is she somebody's like relevant? That name sounds familiar.
I don't know. I haven't heard of her. But that doesn't mean that she's not important. I don't know a lot of people on the scene. But okay, so Samantha D says, "Dear atheists who used to be Christians, you can't claim to have ever had a personal relationship with God if now you claim He doesn't exist. If God doesn't exist, then who did you have that relationship with?" She had to think about it.
Mm-hmm. She looks like she's thinking about it in her profile picture.
So, I mean, yeah, I see. What do you think about this whole idea that you, like, once you're Christian, you don't go back?
Well, we can take this many different ways. I mean, from the moment you're born, you have no knowledge of any religion. So theoretically and technically, everyone is born as an atheist. They're just taught a religion later. I don't know if we're going to go that route with it. But a lot of people have used this argument on me in the past, saying, you never knew God because now you're an atheist. And if you really knew God, you would have never became an atheist. Mm-hmm. And so I have this quote on my Instagram page, and it's a very relevant quote for this actual comment right here. And the quote goes, "Beliefs shape your reality. Therefore, whether you believe a God exists or not, you're right." And so, in short, to answer what she's saying here, we can't claim to have ever had a personal relationship with God if we claim he doesn't exist now. Actually, we believed at the time, I can't speak for everyone, I can speak for myself. We believed at the time that we did have a personal relationship with God, and we understood later that our belief was wrong. However, since beliefs shape your reality, that was real to us. I don't know about your history, GE, with religion, but did you believe at one time?
Oh yes, definitely. I thought that I had a relationship to God. I mean, I prayed, I talked with God. Whenever something bad happened in my life, I thought it was because I had done something bad or I had thought something bad.
Did he ever talk back to you? Did he answer prayers when you were religious?
Not like verbally. Like I know some people have the auditory hallucinations of God speaking to them, but I never had that. I more or less was taught to see God's answers in the events that happened in my life. So like if I ended up getting into a wreck or something like that, I would think that was God punishing me for something that I did or said or something like that.
Yeah, you were masturbating last Friday and he didn't
exactly.
Like that.
Yeah, that's that describes my entire time in high school.
Hey, that describes my entire time from like 11 until, how old am I now? I'm 30 now. 11 to 30.
Man.
So to the last question of this comment, if God doesn't exist, then who did you have that relationship with? The only way that this makes sense, right? The only way that this makes sense is that no gods exist. Because that means that who did you have that relationship with? We had ourselves fooled. We were completely brainwashed into thinking that we were in some sort of communication. Sorry, it was a mosquito. Some sort of communication with God. Okay, that only works if that God is not real, but we believe that it was. If he was actually real, you couldn't even ask this question.
Mm-hmm. Well, so in my opinion, we had the relationship with ourselves because, I mean, to be quite honest, I believe that everybody has like their own concept of whatever kind of God definition. You have your own concept of what that God is actually like. And so I feel like this relationship that you create is actually just more or less like a relationship with yourself, because, you know, that would explain why, you know, God can rationalize various different things in everybody's life, and why people would feel that God thought it was okay for them to do, you know, horrible action A, while another different Christian feels like God would look down and not affirm that particular action. So I think that this God that you have a relationship with is actually a sort of inner manifestation of your own self, and maybe it's an idealized version of yourself, but it's still yourself that you have a relationship with. And you know, I feel like this entire comment goes the way of a no true Scotsman, saying that, yes, well, you weren't a true Christian. And it's like, I was a true Christian. Don't tell me what I did and did not believe. But I also hate the idea that once you're a Christian, you have to stay a Christian. Like, otherwise you just were never really a real Christian. I mean, that blows my mind that somebody could actually rationalize away other people leaving the faith as just not being true Christians. I mean, it's like, you don't know them. You don't know their life.
Yeah, no true Scotsman. The fallacy. You have no idea. You have to accept someone at their word of them telling you what they believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to include them, rather, in the group because they said that they're a member of it. And, you know, at one point, we believed we were members of this group. And I don't know about you, but I believed it wholeheartedly. You know, a lot of things were instilled, like the efficacy of prayer, mm-hmm, and the importance of saying grace Like, I remember one time I almost cried because I ate. I was so hungry, I started eating before I even said grace. And then
Hmm.
I had to ask for forgiveness and I cried. Like, I was like 14 years old. Man, we do you think I would have done that if I didn't really believe it? Ain't nobody shedding no tears over something we don't actually believe in, okay? You don't see me shedding no tears for leprechauns, shorty, all right?
Well, Aeolus, that it works both ways because that means that we have to admit that Lee Strobel and J. Warner Wallace and all of them guys were once atheists and are now Christians, which I really don't have a problem with accepting the idea that they were atheists and then turned into Christian. I really don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with how Lee Strobel portrays himself as an atheist, because he portrays himself as an atheist in like the worst light, and I feel like that's due to his perception of atheists after becoming a Christian, because you see this all the time with Christians looking back on their maybe non-belief past and painting it with this really horrible brush. And I feel like that's due to their own skewed perspective that they've come into. And so I don't deny that like people like Lee Strobel were an atheist at one point, but I do doubt his characterization of himself as an atheist.
Yeah, I somewhat agree with that. I also think that, him being an author, he's doing, and I'm not totally sure about his entire career history there, but I know he's a famous author, and I've actually read a couple of his books. And I'll say that the caricature that he presents of an atheist is what most Christians, what resonates with most Christians. So
Hmm.
the way he presents himself is the misconception that they have of atheists. And so when he presents himself that way, that it enables him to actually sell his product, because he's saying, "See, I was this evil, dirty atheist, but I became a Christian and God saved me." And fundamentally what he's doing, he's fulfilling the story that they want to hear.
Hmm. He sure is.
And like you said, I also do not have a problem accepting that at one point he was an atheist. In his case, it seems unlikely. I think he's selling books. Okay. But I will accept that he was an atheist first and became a Christian later. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I couldn't say that there's no God. I couldn't say that the God doesn't exist or his God doesn't exist, or that he doesn't actually believe in God because he was an atheist first. He probably maybe really believes it. Okay, and that's the thing. Beliefs shape your reality. Therefore, whether you believe a God exists or not, you are personally right. It doesn't mean it actually exists or not. Okay? You can believe in the magic fucking shoe if you want, and the shoe can come kick your ass every Friday, all right? But that don't make it real.
All right, you want to go ahead and stamp Samantha?
Listen, Samantha D, you had the most stupid religious comment this week. Dumbass of the week.
All right. Well, heathens, I really enjoyed y'all stopping by today for all of these dumbass comments that we were going through. I'm the Godless Engineer. You can find me here on YouTube at Godless Engineer, or on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok even.
No, you did not get a TikTok.
I do have a TikTok.
No.
Primarily
No.
just so that nobody else would get my TikTok handle. But I do post there occasionally.
But like he said, make sure you go over there and check his channel out. We started these collaborations a long time ago, and we hope to have many more in the future. So don't forget to stop by there and check it out.
Yes, definitely. Well, we both appreciate everybody watching today. If you will leave a comment down below, we'd really love to hear what you guys think about these comments as well. And so I guess we'll see you guys next time on these stupid religious comments, right, Aeolus?
You damn right. I'm back. The boys are back in town. And no religious comment is safe. So, as always, may reason forever outweigh religious stupidity. Peace.